This is a public meeting of the Indiana Arts Commission, Arts in the Parks and Historic Sites 2019 Advisory Review Panel Individuals Number 2. I am Ruthann Calling, Commissioner from Jeffersonville. Today is November 8th, and we are meeting by conference call and streaming live from a webinar. We welcome applicants who may be listening in today and would like to remind you that you are muted for this review. There is no direct contact or conversation about the evaluation and disposition of applications before, during, or after the panel meeting. At this time, we would like the panelists and staff to introduce themselves, stating their name, occupation, and where they are from in the state. Kavathe, will you please start?
Hi, I'm Kavathe Mahoney. I am located in Indianapolis, Indiana. I am the manager of the Garfield Park Arts Center.
Jared?
Hi, I'm Jared Tobias. I'm from Fort Wayne, Indiana, and I'm a mural painter and an art educator.
Elizabeth?
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Tompkins, Natural Resources Coordinator with Bloomington Parks and Recreation in Bloomington, Indiana.
Nicole?
Hi, I'm Nicole Jacquard. I'm a professor at a university in the School of Fine Arts in Bloomington, Indiana.
Stephanie?
Hi, I'm at Marian University. I'm an environmental educator and restoration ecologist.
Anna?
I'm Anna Travisser, Artist and Community Services Manager at the Indiana Arts Commission.
Is Louis still there?
No, he's not, but Deanna is. Would you like to?
Sure. Deanna?
Deanna Postma, IAC staff, here for technical help.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right. Now we'll begin the panel review. This is how the process will work. I will announce the application we will review and ask the first reader to begin the discussion. The first reader will provide their assessment of the application based upon the evaluation criteria and their perspective. Panelists, please note that the applications do not need to be recapped since everyone has read it. Just provide your comments. After the first reader is finished, I will ask the second reader to present any new, additional, or opposing comments. We are not looking for consensus, just a full evaluation from the different perspectives panelists bring to the table. After the second reader has finished, I will open for discussion the final comments. Remember, in the interest of time, we are only looking for new, additional, or opposing viewpoints. If a panelist has a conflict of interest, that panelist will be placed on hold while the application is reviewed. However, there are no conflicts of interest in this panel. Finally, once the application has been reviewed by the full panel, we ask the panel to update their scores in the online system. It is common for scores to change as a result of this broader discussion. These scores save automatically. Are there any questions? Very well, let's begin. We'll start with the application from America Carrillo. The first reader is Stephanie. Stephanie, please.
Hi, so overall, I really like this concept, and she seems to have worked well with the park staff and communicating with them, which is, of course, super important because it's going to be in their nature center. And so it seems like that she had a lot of support from the park staff, which is excellent. The only things that I would like to know or maybe clarify, and maybe that the answer is no. But of course, people will be able to see this after she's done, because it's going to be open to the public when the Nature Center is open. But I didn't know, she didn't indicate if she was going to engage with anyone while she was doing, creating it. So that might be a no, because I also know she's doing a really cool video, and she does that with her work. And so maybe that wouldn't lend itself to being able to do that. But I wondered if she was going to be able to interact with the public or have the ability for interested visitors to ask questions while she's working with it, or is it just going to be blocked off until she's done? And then there was I have a marketing question, so I'm kind of looking into public benefit and community impact. She mentions a reception with family and friends, so I didn't know if that was just for like a personal, like her own reception for her family and friends, or if they were going to do a more public reception and invite the public with that. The other thing that I was a little concerned with her experience, so I do not have an art background, but with her experience, it looks like most of her work that she provided for us was either digital or kind of done in an abstract way. And so since this is going to be placed in a nature center for visitors to get a real experience of being in the canyon, I would have liked to see examples of art that kind of accurately portrays the natural environment. Now, she does mention in her application that she is going to go with a naturalist to the canyon to get a good idea of how to portray that in the nature center. So as long as she works with them to make sure that if it's supposed to be something that people that can't get to the canyon will be able to experience the canyon, it should be, I think, pretty close to what, less abstract and more real, if that makes sense. And that's really all the things I had to say about that one.
Thank you, Stephanie. Our second reader is Jared.
Yes, my main concern is also the work that was given as an example. It doesn't seem to reflect the aspirations of this project. I was hoping to see some examples of installation or naturalist painting that would reflect her goal of achieving this kind of sensory experience for people in particular that can't experience the canyon. The concern is that we would be granting this public space to a project that may not fulfill its intention. That's all.
Thank you, Jared. Any new, additional, or opposing comments?
I share similar things, but more specifically, the actual construction of the fabric portion of the installation doesn't seem like it is a part of her background. So I would be concerned on the feasibility of that. And then also the community impact. I definitely see that this is a benefit for people who can't visit the area, but I wonder if there's a way to engage people more by sharing their perspectives of the area. Maybe people who can visit the area could contribute part of their experience to make it more of a complete experience versus the perspective of one artist. Maybe incorporate some writings or other art from the public to create a more complete experience.
Thank you. Additional comments? None being noted, I'll ask you to please finalize your scores and update your online comments. Let me know if you need more time.
Okay, I think we can move on.
We'll move ahead to the next applicant, Amy Greely, and our first reader is Nicole.
Hi, okay. So reading through this application, it seems like there were several components to this proposal for the workshop to make and take, as well as creating a copper sculpture and wearables that will be a part of the museum shop. And one of the things that I might suggest is to focus on maybe one or two of them and perhaps removing the sculpture component. And then I was wondering, describe what metalsmithing techniques would be used for the workshop in the space. Otherwise, it seems to have a really clear connection to the TC Steel Park, with the main point focusing on the work and the workshops that will use the garden, Selma's garden, and perhaps maybe thinking about a broader audience and how to engage a broader audience. I think my other comments were that it was really nice to see the images that would directly relate to the project as well. And I was grateful to see that. And being a visual person, for me, it's always very helpful to see examples that directly correlate to the overall idea in some way.
Thank you, Nicole. Our second reader is Kavathe.
Hello. I also agree. I think this is a very interesting project. I like the workshop component. I think that's definitely more engaging. I don't think that it necessarily doing the sculpture would necessarily be a bad thing either to implement. I'm kind of more interested also in you know, what tools and techniques will be described, and if any of these will have safety concerns. I mean, is this something that's adaptable for younger children as well, or will it only be around older children and adults? And then also, as she's creating the sculpture, you know, any safety concerns for public that might be working with or around her, if there's any hands-on components there as well that could be dangerous for younger children as well. I think that was the only thing I had to add.
Thank you, Kavathe. Any new, additional, or opposing comments? None being noted, I'll ask you to please finalize your scores and update your online comments. Let me know if you need more time.
I think that's plenty of time, Ruthann. You can keep moving along faster.
Next applicant is Cheryl Lorance, and our first reader is Elizabeth.
Yes, I think this application, I liked the addition of the interactive activity. The stone carving itself seemed to be kind of a passive for visitors, not too many ways to interact other than conversation, but I really liked the interactive activity of the creating a stone. I was wondering if there was a way to connect it more to the limestone part of the focus of this park and of the limestone carving, perhaps using fossils as the interior of the stone, as many limestone formations do have fossils from the sea. And then one other thing that I noted was the budget. While it does match the grant request, I would have liked to have seen more specifics of what tools were needed, what miscellaneous supplies, and a breakdown of perhaps where those are going to be purchased, but more of a breakdown of specific items to detail those costs.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Our second reader will be Stephanie.
My only comment was, and stop me if I'm wrong here, but I didn't see an estimate of how many people might be impacted or how many participants would be in the workshops. I mean, I know she's going to have to buy supplies, so there's going to have to be some sort of estimate. I also know that if it's more of a, you know, as people go by, that's going to be harder to gauge, but I didn't see any kind of estimate on how many people or she would think that would be impacted by this.
Thank you, Stephanie. Are there any new, additional, or opposing comments? None being noted, please finalize your scores and update your online comments. Let me know if you need more time. Our next applicant is Corey Hagelberg, and our first reader is Jared.
Yeah, I feel that this is a solid application throughout, and I appreciate it highlighting the diversity of the park. I think it could benefit from building upon the educational resources that are available to the participants. And as far as feasibility goes, that it would be beneficial to secure the dates as early as possible because this seems to be a very popular park. So I think it would benefit everyone to secure those dates as soon as possible. And as far as engaging with the park, some outdoor activity could broaden the scope of the experience rather than keeping the entire workshop indoors. Other than that, I think that the staff could also be included in their questionnaire to get feedback and to find room for improvement. And as I mentioned before, to have some supporting literature that helps educate participants on the biodiversity of the park so that they have a greater appreciation for the space. That is all I have.
Thank you, Jared. Our second reader is Nicole.
Yeah, so I'm reading through this and I could have missed this, but anyway, I in my notes with the feasibility, I put the proposal mentions 3 programmed events. However, listed in the major activity, there are only 2 workshops. So I'm not sure if I missed something and possibly the artist talk was the other event, but I was wondering about that in particular. I also commented in the cultural asset and national environment that they discuss the importance and uniqueness of, to discuss the importance and the uniqueness of the site itself. Why can't it happen somewhere else besides the landscape of the dunes? It seemed like they weren't really very specific about that. And then I also noted possibly more thought about public engagement, since this category is the largest percentage of evaluating the proposals, and how can you involve those underrepresented? Industry did develop that area in that region quite heavily, and there are many who are close by that have never experienced the beauty of that particular region. And then I also noted that looking at the website, it was nice to see the direct correlation to the landscape and the industrial. And so it really made sense of why visually that person wanted to partake in an event in that particular park.
Thank you, Nicole. Are there any new, additional, or opposing comments to add? None being noted, I'll ask you to please finalize your scores and update your online comments. Let me know if you need more time. Our next applicant is Gary Schmitt, and our first reader is Kavathe.
Hi. So I really like this project as well. I think that it's a really great way to introduce people to the fiber arts, and I think that's coming back a little bit. So it's very interesting. I really thought it was beneficial for it to link to the leaf identification program, coordinating with the park. I think was clearly stated on here. Some things that can make this a little bit stronger would be thinking through a rain date as well. I know if, you know, a lot of programs have rain dates, especially if you're coordinating it with that outdoor program. It was also stated that the age starts at 8, but I wasn't sure if there was a cutoff for the workshop. I know it's very different. You know, an 8-year-old might learn at a different pace than an adult does. So it could be stronger if the workshop was broken up into different age groups in terms of feasibility. And then, let's see here. I was also unclear about, you know, I know the leaf identification project takes place outdoors, but was wondering if the workshop is an indoors or outdoors project as well. And just thinking through if you are encouraging people to work on or go through that leaf identification program first, if this would limit anyone with any disabilities or physical limitations or anything of that sort, might be good to think through as well. And I think that is all.
Thank you, Kvasse. Our second reader is Elizabeth.
Yes, I did note that there is a facility rental shelter house for the day in the project expense detail. So to answer that, I think there is a location for the program. I was wondering about the grant request at the top of the application does not match the detail grant request at the bottom in the project income detail. So that was just maybe a typo, but something I noted. And also I wondered about the logistics of the art show. So being a park, are you going to have visitors? Are you going to be mailing those things back? Is there going to be a cost, or is that going to be absorbed by the artist? And I didn't note that in any of the expenses. That's all.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Anyone have a new, additional, or opposing comments?
I do have one thing to say. This is Stephanie. So he mentioned, I think, that it's going to be after 3 hours, they would have their felted leaves. I was wondering if that meant it would be 3 hours for the workshop, the art workshop, and in addition to the leaf ID walk. And how long is the leaf ID walk, and are they going to pair those up at the same time? So will there be the leaf ID walk, and then directly after would be the workshop? That would be the best thing to do. But I was a little confused because I think in the application somewhere it said something about the afternoon they would do the workshop. So that could be a very long day. Even if it's paired up together, that could be a really long time for, say, an 8-year-old. So just making sure that whatever age range it is, knowing the limitations to that.
Thank you. Additional comments? None being noted, please finalize your scores and update your online comments. If you need more time, let me know. Our next applicant is Heather LeFebvre. Our first reader is Nicole.
This application was very, very thorough with the engagement as well as the actual activity. For my notes, I said this project was well thought out from start to finish. I appreciate the level of detail as well as the connection to the historic space. I noted that it's highly engaged in the TC Steele Park, the beauty and what the park has to offer regarding the flora and fauna, as well as the historic buildings for inspiration in relation to the journaling sketchbooks. It seemed like it had a very well thought out budget that was realistic, and the resume and the documentation demonstrating clearly the past successes of this project seemed very overall engaging to the nature of the park and the participants. And yeah, I think the visual images of the past successes were really well documented, and you can see the high level of engagement with the actual project.
Thank you, Nicole. Our second reader is Kavathe.
I also agree with Nicole. I appreciated the thoroughness of this application, and the connection to the site was definitely evident. I think the only thing that I was interested in learning more about was the planet era painting and interactions with the visitors on site. I know sometimes there's a little bit of a barrier between an audience and an artist when they're outside painting. I didn't know if there were any actual interactive activities or talking points that were planned that could help kind of break the ice between the artist when she's painting outdoors and connecting people back to actual painting techniques and how what plein air painting really is. I think could be really beneficial.
Thank you, Kavathe. Additional comments? None being noted, I ask you to please finalize your scores and update your online comments. Let me know if you need more time.
You guys are doing an excellent job. Thank you so much.
Our next applicant is Jennifer Dwyer, and our first reader is Elizabeth, please.
Yes, I feel this application seemed to have good support from the park, and I thought that it seemed good that the applicant made an adjustment from last year, changing the materials of her outdoor sculpture stand, kind of listening to the staff and listening to the impact on being out in the weather. I had a little confusion about the project as it seemed to bounce around from a turtle to a butterfly in a couple of places. So I'm not sure, again, if that is something I misread or where that was coming from. And another thought I had about the number of participants that the artist has had in the past. Clearly it's worked out, but I'm wondering if there is an assistant but 60 people seems like a lot of people to facilitate a program with kind of hands-on activities. I love that hands-on activity portion, and I think it's great to really connect to the work that she's doing and then also connect to the natural processes in the park. And I especially like the identification of an endangered species as the focus. But I did wonder about that feasibility in having that many people and one artist to work with them all. And that's all.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Our second reader is Jared.
Yes. A couple of notes that I had. It seems to be single-minded in clay activities. I think that some basic drawing materials could enhance the experience for people who may not necessarily want to engage with the clay, and it can broaden its outreach as far as the people that are engaging with it. The other one is additional educational materials regarding the endangered species and the native plants and all of these elements that they're incorporating into the workshop. They could boost the educational element of the experience. And And due to the popularity of the event, I think that an additional workshop would be worth doing. That is all that I have.
Thank you, Jared. I'll ask you now for new, additional, or opposing comments, please.
Oh, go ahead.
This is Elizabeth. I just wanted to note that I did find in the application that it does mention sketching before they started sculpting. That's all.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Anyone else with a comment?
Yeah, this is Nicole, and I just wanted to say that I also found that there was some editing issues in regards to the application, because it does mention in the second paragraph the egg larva to adult butterfly, but it also mentions turtles and sculpting the insect in 4 stages of life. Turtles are reptiles.
Thank you, Nicole. Anyone else? I'll ask you then to please finalize your scores, update your online comments. Let me know if you need more time. Our next applicant is Jonathan Soard, and our first reader is Stephanie Shuck.
So I really love the concept of this application, and then I think, but I'm a little confused by exactly what's going on. So what I think the concept is that the artist wants to engage people who may be intimidated by art or don't think they're good at art, and kind of letting people know that you can do art. You don't have to be a trained artist to do it. But I was confused on exactly what they were going to be doing. He mentioned a lot of supplies that he'll be using, and there's a lot of there are a lot of things up in the air about it too. The good thing is that it seems like he is working with the parks staff and has their support, and plans to do a training day with them, which I think is probably pretty crucial to make sure that they understand what exactly will be going on. They're not sure if they're going to have people register for it, or if it's going to be something that as people walk by. So I think that he really needs to work with the park staff to make sure that this is successful, and that he keeps them up to date. And there's a lot of communication there, especially since there are so many things up in the air. Let's see, what else did I say? I think that's basically it. It was just they weren't really sure how they were going to draw the participants in, and the actual activity was not really, at least not from what I could see, not really explained completely.
Thank you, Stephanie. Our second reader is Nicole.
Yeah, I agree with Stephanie. I really enjoyed reading through this proposal, but at times I was really kind of quite confused about exactly what was going on, because there were a lot of things that were thrown out in the proposal, and I think that it just needed some more clarification, and I just wasn't really quite clear on the learning objectives. So it definitely seemed to be doing something unique, or wanting to do something unique with people who would be intimidated by art. But I think that at points I was a little bit confused, and I think it needed to be tightened up just a little bit, and maybe just a little bit more straightforward with what the overall objectives were for the projects.
Thank you, Nicole. Any new, additional, or opposing comments? None being noted, I'll ask you to finalize your scores, update your online comments. Let me know if you need more time, please. Our next applicant is Kate Ellis. Our first reader is Jared, please.
Yes, I have a couple of things. The feasibility, it certainly seems feasible. The event may need some flexibility to coincide with the blooming of these flowers because of the nature of our seasons. It's hard to project when that's exactly going to happen, you know, whether we have an early spring or a late spring. That seemed to be a kind of an important variable since it's about the blooms. And again, broadening the educational outreach based on the native plants, I think, is pretty important when that's the heart of the program. And she could certainly build upon the educational materials. And I think there's really no reason to exclude children from these programs. You're broadening the scope of the entire engagement and establishing relationships at an early age with these kind of parks programs. So I think that children should be included. And that's all that I have.
Thank you, Jared. Our second reader is Elizabeth.
I really appreciated the teaching teachers aspect of this. I think that really can extend the reach of this type of programming. I would have liked to have seen more. I saw that there are direct invitations to educators, but it also mentions that it would be geared toward scout leaders and other people who lead children. So I would like to see other ways that those people are going to be reached rather than just direct invitations. Are there school board meetings that you could go to, or perhaps a school newsletter or email list rather than just contacting teachers you already know, but broadening that to a wide variety of teachers would be good.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Are there any new, additional, or opposing comments?
This is Nicole. I also mentioned that it would be nice to offer maybe a section of workshops to the kids. And I mentioned that if that is the end target of teaching teachers and having them adapt their lesson plans, you might learn a lot from the kids themselves about what interests them about your project, as well as how you can reach a broader audience than just teachers. But overall, I really appreciate that it is focusing in on teachers and giving them, you know, a platform for this activity.
Thank you, Nicole. Additional comments?
I noticed a question in some of the comments, written comments about if the fiber cutter equipment was an eligible expense, and it is an eligible expense. It's under $500, so it would not be considered a capital asset or other ineligible equipment.
Thank you. Anyone else? Please finalize your scores and update your online comments. Let me know if you need more time. Our next applicant is Kristina Knowski. Our first reader is Kavathe.
Thank you. I thought this was a pretty thorough application. Some of the notes that I had, I was a little concerned about, you know, the level of that an artist or a participant might have in art. So if you don't have any drawing or painting experience, would, you know, this still be can, they learn the drawing techniques within the 3 to 5 hour workshops. I also had a little bit of concern. I know it was mentioned that during some of these workshops, the artists would also be working on their own projects. And I wonder, if demoing techniques makes sense, but, having your artists there really to help the students who signed up for the workshop, I think should be the first priority of the workshop. There were some dates also mentioned that will be taking place during the Indiana Dunes Birding Festival. And I think for a workshop that occurs during a festival, I was curious to know whether or not that would require pre-registration or if it would be a drop-in sort of program. Personally, I think having a drop-in component or a shorter activity that could be done during the festival that introduces people to these, the Avifauna and the drawing and painting techniques might be beneficial in a festival setting versus a 3 to 5 hour workshop. I also was wondering, it said that the workshop was eligible for all ages, and I think breaking it up into different age groups might be beneficial as well, because it's different teaching a 5-year-old versus an adult in a workshop. I think that was all of my notes.
Thank you, Kavathe. Our second reader is Stephanie.
I don't really have too much to add. I thought that it's probably super feasible because they've done it the past couple of years. So I think this is the third year that they're working with the park staff and specifically being with this festival. So it seems like they've done their homework on how to make sure that it happens and coordinating with the park staff and the other festival activities.
Thank you, Stephanie. Any new, additional, or opposing comments? None being noted, I'll ask you to please finalize your scores and update your online comments. Let me know if you need more time. Our next applicant is Lisa Walsh, and our first reader is Nicole, please.
Yep. I noted that this, again, was a very well thought out project with great ties to the park and how the park will be used for artistic inspiration. The timeline was pretty clear, the budget was clear, and the artist resume definitely reflects significant accomplishments to complete the project. I also noted that a direct link to the proposed park and its key features of the karst topography with sinkholes and caves relating to the specific spots in the landscape, and that it also was engaging with underrepresented populations. The time frame was taking into account the broader public participation. The demonstrations are on a longer time frame, and underserved populations have been considered by the longer timeline, and accommodating for different learning styles. And it seemed like it provided a good atmosphere for learning, and offering free park admission was a nice note. And then I also noted that there was an excellent job providing samples at the end of the at the end of the proposal for the end product, and the various stages of how the pieces progress using the different techniques, and how the landscape was used for inspiration, which clearly demonstrated the successes and how it will benefit future work.
Thank you, Nicole. Our second reader is Jared.
Yes, I think it fulfills all of its expectations. The only room for improvement that I see would be more hands-on experiences for participants of all ages, and to have the opportunity to encourage those participants to interpret a variety of natural features. That is all.
Thank you, Jared. Any new, additional, or opposing comments? None being noted, I'll ask you to finalize your scores, update your online comments, and let me know if you need more time. Our next applicant is Patricia Bartels, and our first reader is Elizabeth.
Yes, I thought this was a very thorough application. I really appreciated the use of a naturalist for the program. I think that's a great way to expand on outside of the artistic perspective and actually bring in those Earth Day kind of conservation efforts and focused on invasive species is great, and environmental health. Really well thought out organization of the programming, and I thought it was a good combination of activities that really engage the visitors and then actually demonstrating the creation of pieces as well. And then the donation for the auction that the artist has done in the past, I thought it was a great idea to kind of pay it forward and continue the benefits of the funding that could be achieved, could be obtained with this grant.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Our second reader is Nicole.
Yeah, I really don't have too much more to add. I thought it was a really well laid out proposal, and that, you know, very well laid out timeline as well in terms of the activities. And yeah, it seemed like the work that was outlined in the proposal seemed, you know, pretty interesting and engaging for the actual site as well as the participants.
Thank you, Nicole. Any new, additional, or opposing comments? None being noted, I'll ask you to please finalize your scores and update your online comments. Let me know if you need more time. Our next applicant is Rachel Kvass, and our first reader is Stephanie.
I thought this was a very well thought out application. I think that all of the points were hit, and it's very organized in that the artist has spoken with all of the park staff and has a timeline on one working with them throughout. I really liked how she's bringing education into it too. So educating people about the different species of native plants to Indiana, and that can be found specifically in the park. And then also that she's using publications that the park has already on native species of trees and flowers. And then also bringing in other organizations' information like the Native Plant and Wildflower Society. So all in all, I think this was a very well thought out application.
Thank you, Stephanie. Our second reader is Kavathe.
I agree. I also thought it was a very well thought out and organized application. I really appreciated the detail in the timeline as well. I do think it would be interesting, since the artist's background is in urban landscape and architecture, to link back to urban environments, where examples of where these native plants may exist in urban environments and how participants could incorporate native plants into their own home environments could be a really cool way to connect back and take back what they've learned from the educational component of the classes to back into their own homes. That's all I had to add.
Thank you, Kavathe. Any new, additional, or opposing comments?
I just
Then-
wanted to,
Sure, go ahead.
this is Elizabeth. I appreciated all the detail in the project expenses, but the total project expense did not match the grant request at the top. The grant request in the project income detail is listed differently than the grant amount requested at the very top of the application.
Thank you for pointing that out.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Anyone else have comments? None being noted, I'll ask you to please finalize your scores and update your online comments. Let me know if you need more time. Our next applicant is Sean Yates, and our first reader is Jared.
Yes, as thorough as this application is, I feel that the scope of the demographic is too narrow, focusing on seniors, and that you could broaden the effectiveness of this program by engaging younger audiences, as well as the cultural impact. You could offer more engagement with natural materials and interactions. It's about broadening the demographics of the entire scope of the project is really at the heart of what seems to be lacking in this one. That's all that I have.
Thank you, Jared. Our second reader is Stephanie.
Well, I'm gonna disagree a little bit and say that I liked this for that fact, because I think that a lot of projects and grants go towards educating children outdoors, and as an environmental educator, I completely, it's absolutely needed. But there are other demographics as well, and I like that he is focusing on seniors, because I think that a lot of times maybe we might need to draw seniors out to parks a little bit more, or maybe even give them the ability to be able to go to some of these parks. So I like that. It doesn't mean that it couldn't be broadened, but I also know that everybody's kind of different, and some people work much better with kids, and some people work much better with adults. And then I think that even the senior community, you have to have a certain skill with that as well. Other than that, I thought it was a good project.
Thank you, Stephanie. I will ask for additional new or opposing comments.
This is Elizabeth. I agree with the senior focus. I think that's rare and good to see. And I wanted to note that I thought the outreach and advertisement was really well thought out and really targeted toward the intended audience, with the senior lunches and library programs just going to where these people are. I appreciated that.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Any additional comments?
I just
None
wanted to
being noted.
clarify.
Sorry, go ahead.
I think you guys are all on the same page of this, but just for the sake of clarity, I want to review the criteria for public benefit and community impact. The criteria we're looking for is that it includes evidence that the project will actively engage an audience at the site, that it will address the inclusion of some underserved populations, that it will include opportunities to share the project activities with the public, that it enables the public to acquire knowledge or skills in the arts, that a specific audience has been identified, and that the marketing plan includes specific ways to communicate with that audience.
Thank you, Anna. Any other comments? I'll ask you to please finalize your scores and update your online comments. Let me know if you need time. Our next applicant is Sunny Miller, and our first reader is Kavathe.
Hi, so I thought this was definitely an interesting project. I do think some of my comments included kind of focusing in on specific goals and action items and outcomes of these projects, because some of them seemed a little bit broad. For example, the eagle painting project wasn't completely clear to me in that, you know, are guests actually observing eagles? Will these be drawn from photographs or actual, you know, mounted eagles? Or I wasn't really clear on what they would be doing in that workshop. And I think too, with the age recommendations, you know, really thinking through the different age groups and what levels participants learn at and are capable of creating might help also kind of hone in on what the specific goals and action items will be in these workshops as well. Let's see here. I think there was a portion about restoration as well. And I just wanted some clarification on, you know, what this restoration project portion is all about and how it relates to the project. I appreciate that the artist is really trying to focus on both insects and animals, but I think that kind of makes it a little scattered. So I think just really being clear about what people will be doing in the workshop is one of the main comments that I had. Let me see here. Yeah, I think that's my main feedback.
Thank you, Kavathe. Our second reader is Elizabeth.
Yes, I think that the target audience and marketing could have been a little bit more fleshed out and specify who this is going to target and how they're going to get them there. There were a little detail, but I would have liked to have seen more. And I agree that I think it's interesting to include so many different topics and kind of broaden it to different aspects of the park, but some more details about how that is going to be achieved and connecting all of those things I think would be good. That's all.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Additional, new, or opposing comments? I'll ask you then to please finalize your scores and update your online comments. Let me know if you need more time. Our next applicant is Tammeron Jonesfrancis, and our first reader is Stephanie.
So I think that the artist made the objectives very clear of this application and what they plan to do. I didn't have any problem with understanding what exactly they wanted to do and how they were going to do it. I liked how there's more than one artist involved. I think that helps with maybe perspective, and then also maybe dealing with a wide range of people, dealing with possibly the public. They're working with park staff, and they have a lot of background and experience in each of the workshops that they will be doing. It seems like they have a pretty good idea of how they're going to market the event, including creating their own Facebook page and then contacting the local media. Let's see. Yeah, I think that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Stephanie. Our second reader is Jared.
Yeah, I agree. This is very straightforward application, certainly within reach, and a good support system there at Pokagon. The only room for improvement that I see would be simply broadening the scope of the program to include basic drawing for people that might not be interested in clay. It wouldn't cost much more, but that's all that I have, really. Thank you.
Thanks, Jared. Any new, additional, or opposing comments?
This is Nicole. The only thing that I noted with this application, it seemed very well-rounded, and I really liked all the things that they were touching on, but it seemed a lot to take on for the proposal. And I was going to mention that maybe reducing the number of workshops and lengthening them to more than just 2 hours because of the depth of what they were trying to cover.
Thank you, Nicole. Additional comments?
This is Elizabeth. I had a question about the registration process. I didn't see details, and I was wondering how participants sign up. Do they have to pre-register? And I appreciated the low-income participants being able to receive a gate waiver, but how does that happen? Is there an application, and what are the criteria that allow somebody to get that gate waiver?
Thank you, Elizabeth. Anyone else? All right. Please finalize your scores and update your online comments. Let me know if you need more time. This then concludes the Arts in the Parks and Historic Sites 2019 Individual #2 Advisory Review Panel. I thank you all.